This is actually a good move from these artists if they want to increase their fan base, because this type of music in Mexico has for a long time been looked down on. And even in the US, like let's say that you were trying to listen to corridos in the 90s, like your friends would make fun of you because your friends would have gotten into alternative rock, Nirvana, hip hop. So they would always look down on this type of music. They even have a word for people that listen to corridos. They're called paisas, right? That's an association that's made between a paisa and the type of music that they listen to. But then seems to have changed in that now corridos have become more mainstream, but only to an extent. Like corridos are
Hmm.
nowhere near as popular outside of Mexico and California or even parts of the States as reggaeton has become a worldwide global phenomenon.
True
And
that. True
and
that.
so to Mexicans, when they see other people embracing their music, like they like that. And
Yeah.
so they're gonna get a very good reception from the Mexican people that listen to this music because they're gonna say, "Yes, look, finally, people are embracing our music as well."
All right. You are listening to the Brown Perspective. This is one of your hosts, Eduardo, and I'm here con el único, el inigualable RO.
What's going on?
So this week was a historic week, not because we inaugurated our 46th presidents, not because Lady Gaga and J Lo were the performance at the inauguration ceremony, or because we had Amanda Gorman recite a beautiful poem. For none of those reasons, so this week was historic because reggaeton made it to the concert of the inauguration of the president. So you had Osuna and Luis Fonsi perform two of the popular songs from last year. And then the same week, Osuna and Anuel AA come out with a shared album, a collaboration. And one of the songs, Municiones, which you're seeing on your screen right now, which has a lot. Well, it has once the song gets going, it has a banda beat to it, or regional beat. I don't know what would be the best way to describe it. So it's basically a reggaeton, not only over Mexican beats and Mexican sounds, but also with a lot of imagery about the desert, about the drug trade, and all those factors that unfortunately we've come to relate to corrido music.
And you're having this still shot right here. You have the picture of the stacks of dollar bills in the back. I don't
Woo,
think I
every
don't.
poor kid's dream right there.
Yeah, this is you send me a link to this video, and we can't play it by the way, just because of YouTube's copyright laws. We a lot of videos get taken down, especially when you have videos as popular as this one with already 8 million views, and it was released 2 days ago.
So yes, El Negrito de Ojos Claros, Osuna, the way that he likes to be called sometimes, he has been in the game for some time, definitely longer than Anuel AA. And so in some ways, Osuna was kind of like the representation of what's new and this more poppy sound of reggaeton. And then Anuel AA is definitely more trap music, more Latino trap. He's the love interest of my queen from Colombia, Carol G.
Mm.
And it's funny because last summer, both of them had matching songs that were very, very interesting and very trap, more provocative, more sexual. But anyways, coming back to this video, I think that it is a collaboration of similar to J Balvin and Bad Bunny. This is kind of like another like reggaeton trap collaboration, and that's not to say that Osuna hasn't done trap songs in the past. I think he has to an extent.
This is the first video that I see where it's two artists that are crossing over into a different genre, but neither of the artists has a background in the other genre. At least the Mexican corrido genre. When you have seen collaborations in the past, it's been the one that I know of is the one that with Bad Bunny y Natanael Cano, the de El Diablo,
Yeah, that
and
was good.
and you
But
have
that was a corrido with Bad Bunny being able to to hang on and do his style on top of a corrido beat.
Right. And so this is now a crossover where so you have two artists that are not Mexican that are going into that genre. So is it just a way to try to reach out and tap into that market of corridos and try to
Yes.
win over more fans, or is it just because this is like a natural progression that they're starting to see that there's commercial? I guess it's related that they can have commercial success if they tap into this genre because it's not. I wouldn't say there's parallels, but definitely there's an element in corridos. There's always been an element of danger, of risk, because of the recurring themes of drugs and struggle and so forth. So in a way that there are some overlaps, and so I'm not surprised here that they're choosing to do a corrido about drugs, and even they have, I believe, some of the shots. They have is it border crossing that I see?
They have a wall.
So yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. I listened to the song. I didn't particularly like it. I don't know who's producing it, but it sounded to me like it was produced by someone that is trying to rush in to cash in on whatever interest and excitement there is right now in the world of corridos, but by someone that doesn't really know much about it. Because if you listen to corridos that are getting played today, they don't sound like that. They don't sound very traditional the way that this beat sounds.
Yeah, that's true. It would have been faster. It would have been more aggressive in some ways. But I think I want to nail down what you were saying, that in some ways corridos and reggaeton are very similar because they're both the music from, poor, violent areas. And in some ways, early reggaeton or underground reggaeton was a reflection of the drugs, the crimes that was happening in the caseríos and the barrios of Puerto Rico. And so in some ways they reflect the same lifestyle. And in some ways, that's one of the reasons that I think there's been interest of artists from both sides to show, hey, Puerto Ricans can collaborate with corrido artists, and Puerto Ricans can also do music that appeals to the Mexican market, which is a very significant market in terms of consumers, but also within the corrido market. That's also, I'm sure that there's a lot of folks who listen to corridos, particularly here in LA. There's people, you go to a barber shop and you have people who are playing corridos, reggaeton, and are playing hip hop. So there's that connection. And I think in talking about reggaeton and corridos and Mexican music, it would be a missed opportunity if I didn't give a shout out to Daddy Yankee and his song Salud y Vida,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually one of the first reggaeton songs that I heard that actually has the beat is a corrido song, but they change it up and they make it sound more like hip hop and reggaeton. So that's one of my favorite sort of crossover songs that I've listened for a while. And I'll send you that link after
Yeah,
our conversation.
yeah. I haven't listened. That one I haven't listened to. What you were saying, I agree with what you were saying about the genres and then even the fan base. In most cases, listening to both type of genres. For example, here in LA, a lot of the Mexicans that I know, they go to parties and in one segment they're dancing cumbias, and then maybe they'll be playing some corridos, and then the DJ will come in. They may have some live music of people playing corridos, and then the DJ will come in and play reggaeton, and then everybody jumps on the dance floor. And it is somewhat of a generational thing, where it's the older generation that wants the live music. So another thing, it could just be that they understand that the Mexican community is also a huge reggaeton, huge fans of reggaeton. And the storylines, definitely now there's a lot of overlap. Maybe before it wasn't as much. If you go back and listen to corridos from the 80s and even before that, when they always talked about trafficking, but then gradually the stories started changing from telling somebody else's story or telling the story about a smuggler or a drug dealer, and then it started becoming more about, this is my personal struggle, and this is why I started getting into the business of smuggling, because I needed to
Yeah.
hustle. I needed to find a hustle, and that was the only opportunity to me. And that's starting to sound more and more like just modern, like reggaeton that talks about that message, right? Of hustling, even hip hop too. But then even beyond that, the corrido genre started going then towards just young kids being more urban and just celebrating like getting high and partying and drinking. And there were still some connections to the drug trade and to drugs and all that, but you hear a lot of young Mexican artists these days just coming out with songs where all they talk about is getting high. And so yeah, I suppose I can see why this would be uh, tempting for artists to try to cross over. And look, don't get me wrong, I don't particularly like this song, but I always encourage artists to experiment. So I'm all for it. So I'm actually glad that they're getting out of their comfort zone and trying something new and experimenting, because these guys, they may not have found the right formula, but somebody else might, and
Yeah.
they may actually come up with the winning formula where it's like, oh crap, I didn't know I'd like this.
You make a good point, and it's interesting because in some ways the other point that I wanted to make is that this music, in addition to being a reflection of their reality of in their communities, is also somewhat anti-establishment
Yeah.
and against sort of cultural norms and societal norms and the swearing and all that stuff. So, living my life and not caring. But we would be remiss if we don't talk about the similarities of this with hip hop, right? When you think of artists like Biggie, like JC, who started out, who talk about, to your point, who talked about their story of hustling in the streets and being able to make money. And then eventually, they started, their songs are about the lifestyle, but then they start making songs about other things. And their sad reality is that for a lot of kids of color, you either hustle with drugs, you either hustle in music, you hustle in politics, and obviously an increasing number of them are hustling in academics and getting ahead in that way. But in some ways, you need to be hustling, and it's just a matter of which field you end up um, doing your hustle in, but also being able to appreciate those who do other hustles and who share their stories through the music and other art forms.
Yeah, and also one other thing, as you were talking, I thought about this. This is actually a good move from these artists if they want to increase their fan base, because the Mexican culture in general, and that this is just, look, I'm generalizing just based on what I've seen from friends and family members, is that this type of music in Mexico has for a long time been looked down on. And even in the US, like let's say that you were trying to listen to corridos in the 90s, like your friends would make fun of you because your friends would have gotten into alternative rock, Nirvana, hip hop. So they would always look down on this type of music. They even have a word for people that listen to corridos. They're called paisas, right? That's
Hmm.
that's an association that's made between a paisa and the type of music that they listen to. But then seems to have changed in that now corridos have become more mainstream, but only to an extent. Like corridos
Hmm.
are nowhere near as popular outside of Mexico and California or even parts of the states as reggaeton has become a worldwide global phenomenon.
True
and
that. True
and
that.
so to Mexicans, when they see other people embracing their music, like they like that. And
Yeah.
so they're gonna get a very good reception from the Mexican people that listen to this music, because they're gonna say, "Yes, look, finally, people are embracing our music as well. This is no longer just something that we should." I'm not saying that they feel ashamed of it, but it's a huge change
Compliment.
now from what they may have been accustomed to hearing 10, 15 years ago, like getting laughed at, and and their music being viewed a certain way, to now these international reggaetoneros embracing it. And so yeah, so I think in general it's a good move. I think they're gonna get a lot of people that are gonna like what they're doing. There's gonna be a lot of haters, but haters are gonna hate, right? So
Uh-huh.
you can't do anything about that.
That's true. And I think in music, in so many ways, is probably one of the first ambassadors for culture. So I agree with you that in some ways, when your music is embraced or your artists are embraced, you almost feel like, oh, they're embracing our culture. So that's how I feel by how, Shakira has been embraced, how J Balvin has been embraced in some ways as an embracing of that culture of those people. And I think that, yeah, I think that more people are I mean, they're always appreciated Mexican music, and particularly the classic like mariachi. I mean, some banda.
Yeah, but see,
There's a,
that's the difference though. That mariachi has always had this aura of like of sophistication. That you could
yes,
play mariachi at a wedding, you could play mariachi anywhere in the world, and people will be like, "Oh, this is nice. I like this." But you can't play corridos, dude. You can't play
no.
corridos.
Well, you can, but it takes a while. Like that
It's an
person, and
acquired taste. It's
it
definitely very
is.
regional. You have to have grown up around a whole bunch of Mexicans to even get used to it, to identify with the message. And so it's that's why I'm saying that people that have been true to the corrido genre for generations, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure, especially here in the US, if you talk to them, they would have, especially if they went to school in the 90s and maybe even in the 2000s, being called different names because they listen to that music. So yeah, so it is to them. I think they'll get a warm reception from those type of people.
And I
But
agree it, and I agree it, Raul, because I'm still acquiring the taste for corrido myself. I
it's
mean, there's songs that I appreciate, but after a while, it's like, okay, when are we gonna listen to something else? But I appreciate it. And then the other thing I would say is that for me, it's amazing because here you have people who like corridos, who again, I mean, some folks who are in their 30s, 40s, but then there's a lot of young people who also have embraced that corrido culture, but they also, again, they embrace their hip hop, they embrace their reggaeton, and whatever else is happening musically here in the musically rich region of Los Angeles.
Yeah, which is, it's interesting that the one thing that may have actually popularized corridos with the youth is actually the storylines of drug dealing and that risky lifestyle, which is unfortunate, to be honest, because it's celebrating a really dark side of Mexican culture, and I'm not pinning it on the people. It's just because of the socioeconomic conditions in Mexico and the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico and the trade of drugs and guns and the corruption in Mexico. It's left a lot of the population without many opportunities. And right,
Hmm.
this is evident by us, both you and I, you being Colombian and me being Mexican, living in the U.S. because our families had to leave to look for better opportunities. But for a
Hmm.
lot of people that in Mexico that didn't get a chance to leave, that didn't have connections in the states, that couldn't afford to come out here, they're stuck with the reality where there's not many opportunities sometimes, and the drug trade being involved, because people think about the drug trade, they think that it's just smuggling drugs. Dude, it's a whole business, man.
Hmm.
You could be a campesino in a small town in Sinaloa, and you could lease your land to, or you could lease your business to the drug dealers so that they use you raise crops every single year, they subsidize you, and then you sell them into the market, and then in a way you're helping them launder their money. You're
Yeah.
part of the business, and they employ so many different people throughout, and so there's a lot of people that are connected to the drug trade, even if they're not risking their lives. But the element of music that talks about risk and danger, it has a lot of attitude, and it connects with young people that are trying to find an identity the same way
Yeah.
that hip hop connects with them. And so that's why you've actually had the new generation of Mexicans that embrace this music, because they want to identify with this risky lifestyle, with this with someone that is that the storylines that somebody rose from nothing and became powerful. That's why in places like Sinaloa, El Chapo is somewhat of a Robin Hood, modern day Robin Hood, because of his
Yeah.
storyline, and supposedly because he helps the people. But it's in, like I was saying, it's interesting that it is that element of danger that actually kept it alive, because otherwise corridos, the young generation wasn't listening to them anymore. It was dying out,
Hmm.
like in the early 90s. as kids were coming, Mexicans were coming to the U.S. They were assimilating and they were turning to hip hop. They were turning to rock, to alternative, to other forms of music. And then Chalino Sanchez happened, and then like everything else after that, it's just like it put the entire genre in a trajectory where now it's definitely like it's definitely regional, but it is, you do see these young kids that are embracing it.
Yeah, I can't wait until Netflix comes out with the Chalino Sanchez series. That would be worth watching. But I think the other point, and related to Chalino Sanchez in a way, I think that once the singers of those corridos were also young people themselves, I think that kind of gave them, that also gives, broadens their appeal to them. So I know that at his moment, Chalino Sanchez was relatively young, and then I know some of the young corrido artists that I hear, and part that I hear and that I see. I hear them, and you can tell they have a young voice, and you see them, and you see how young they are. That I think that's part of the appeal too. That young people are seeing themselves and these artists as well, and I think that is part of the appeal. It's like, oh, look, somebody who looks like me, who appreciates this music like me, but has my style, dresses like me, looks like me. So yeah, this is a music that appeals to me and my friends.
Yeah, and I'll actually, as you were saying that, it reminded me of this video that my brother sent me a few years ago. This guy's been doing it for a while now. Did I ever share it with you?
El Búho,
No, El Compa Negro.
El Compa Negro.
Ever heard of him?
Oh yes, I think yes. This is the black paisa guy.
Yeah, but just I think YouTube doesn't want me to show our audience El Compa Negro because my laptop just froze and the keyboard stopped working. Se las
It's a
debe.
conspiracy. They're trying to keep the Compa Negro down.
Yeah. Se las debemos para la otra. We'll bring up El Compa Negro. So anyway, just to wrap it up, this is, again, I always encourage experimentation between artists. So this form may not last very long. It may be fleeting, and that's okay
Mhm.
too. Maybe it sticks around for a while. Maybe a new form comes out of it. Whatever it is, right? This is art. You can't constrain art. So let them play around with it. Let them experiment. I'm not the type of individual that listens to something new that it doesn't sound like the traditional form of the art, and I get upset because it's different. It's like, no, dude, just, they're creating something new. Just like how so many hip hop listeners, they don't like the new style of hip hop, this mumbo jumbo, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's evolving. It's not, you don't even have to think of it as hip hop if you want to think about it as something else. But
A
it's just,
strap or
yeah,
yeah, all that stuff.
yeah. So I don't hate on those. It's just a natural progression, and sometimes it's crappy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you get some good stuff out of it.
I agree. Definitely support that.
Oh, it played on its
Hopefully,
own.
that's not going to prevent us from playing this video. But again, thank you so much for listening to our conversation. If you like what you listen, let us know. Let us know what you think about corridos, what you think about the reggaeton genre moving into the space. You can go ahead and follow us on YouTube, also on Twitter and Instagram at the Brown Perspective TV.
Nos vemos.
Ciao.